Welcome, everyone, and so excited today. So we'll get started right away because it's 4 o'clock and we already have Kabir with us. So it's an exciting moment for us. So for this actor, as Shakespeare once said, all the world's a stage. Kabir Bedi career spans across Bollywood, Europe, and Hollywood. He is best known for his European series Sandokan, but of course, I remember him from the American TV series The Bold and the Beautiful, the James Bond film Octopussy, and the Bollywood blockbuster Khoon Bhari Maang. He has bedazzled us, and especially me, with his extraordinary good looks and, of course, his acting. In the theater, he's also played many legendary characters such as Othello, Tughlaq, Abraham, and of course, Shah Jahan. For his lifetime achievements, he was bestowed with Italy's highest civilian honor, which is called the Cavalier, which is a knighthood. He is also a voting member of the Academy that awards the Oscars. Recently, he's published his best-selling memoirs, Stories I Must Tell, The Emotional Life of an Actor, to great critical acclaim. The adventurous journey of a middle-class boy from Delhi who became an international, what I would say, superstar. He also talks about his relationships as well as his work in films. He has been a radio broadcaster, an advertising filmmaker, a voiceover specialist, an event presenter, a motivational speaker, an international actor, and now the latest is an author. Let's take a glimpse of his new book.
In my heartfelt autobiography, I bare my soul with emotional honesty, with stories about affairs and anxieties, milestones and mistakes, and successes that made India proud. Stories of heart-wrenching setbacks and how I survived the roller coaster journey by making, breaking, and remaking as a man. Stories I Must Tell is an emotional experience. I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy Stories I Must Tell, the emotional journey of an actor.
Wow, I mean, that was such a beautiful glimpse. And I know a lot of you have read the book, so would love to hear your views on it. I actually felt like he was talking to me. So please do keep chatting with us and telling us in the chat. In conversation with Kabir today are me and Meeta, co-founders of Sipping Thoughts, but we will be taking a ton of audience questions. So please do start posting in the chat. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you the man of many dimensions, Kabir Bedi. Kabirji, welcome to Sipping Thoughts.
Hi, Sukirti. Thank you so much. And thank you, Meeta. So lovely to be here.
Kabirji, we would love to see you also. Wow.
Here I am in person. Wait a minute. Okay, can you see me now?
Yes,
Wonderful,
absolutely.
wonderful.
Thank you so much. So, Kabirji, we have tons of questions. Our audience has tons of questions, and I know Meeta and I have been talking about it, but I'm going to ask the first one because there's so many memoirs coming out, so many stories. We want to hear from you. Why did you want to tell your story?
That's a very good question. But before I answer that, I really want to thank Mudit and Malti Jain for introducing me to all of you and Sipping Thoughts and all you wonderful cultured people who actually love and read books. It's wonderful to be speaking to an audience like that because it just makes things all the more special. And so my joy in talking here is because I'm talking to people that really like books. So to answer your question, why did I write my book? I wrote my book for people like you, people who like reading books, people who like reading about interesting lives. I've had a pretty interesting and extraordinary life, as many who've read my book will attest to. It has more turns and twists than a thriller, more highs and lows than a roller coaster. And it's a journey of a boy from Delhi who became an international actor spread across 3 continents and had many interesting relationships, met many beautiful people, were part of many interesting happenings and things that make for a good book. Because if you read a book that's just telling everyone what a great man you are, all the awards you won, all the praise you got. It's boring. I have an interesting story to tell because it's full of all these highs and lows. And it's a human story. And I just needed to tell it because it was time. And I felt if I didn't tell it, my story would never be told. So I sat down when the pandemic began and I wrote it in a fevered rush.
And always, I mean, it is a beautiful book. But one of the things you said, we've seen you always with a lot of beautiful people, and especially a lot of beautiful women that you have been with. And you speak quite candidly in this book about your relationships, which is something very new. And especially about your relationships breaking down and having hurt to the extent that you say that you know the price you paid for being impulsively emotional man and moving on. So I want to talk about that because even in the title of your book, you say the emotional life of an actor. So let's
Right,
talk
right.
a little bit about the emotions.
um, I've written about certain relationships very openly and very deeply. I've done it in a way whereby I want people to be uh, a part of those relationships. I want them to feel what it is like to be in those relationships, scene by scene, important events, things that are transformative, the dilemmas I faced. And I think it's important to share that as honestly as possible because that's what it's all about. If you just generalize about relationships, people don't get a sense of the raw emotion that went in. And because I was unsparing on myself, I could talk frankly about other people as well. And relationships are so important in life. They shape you, they change you. They were, for me, they were, each one of them was a turning point, a transformative point. And I needed to share that journey. And, if you look at me and say, here's a man who's been married 4 times, divorced 3 times, he must be an expert on relationships. In a sense, that's true, but in a sense, that's not, because every human being is unique, and every relationship becomes unique by itself, in and of itself. No one can really know the dynamic between a man and a woman. What I can talk about is what it takes, what you should watch out for when entering a relationship. Because I can't tell you how to conduct a relationship. That's too personal. That's too different in each case. I think, the things that break relationships down are all the signs of all those things are there even before you begin the relationship. And we choose to ignore it. We think that's cute, that's eccentric. There's a story I like to quote that women marry men thinking they'll change, but they don't. Men marry women thinking they won't change, and they do. So there's there's many surprises that happen in the course of a relationship. But all those signs, things that you think you'll change, etc., are all there, and we choose to ignore them. So the only advice I can give is be very careful as to who you enter a relationship with, why you enter that relationship, and the reasons for entering that relationship are important, because once you get into a relationship and emotion gets involved, then it's very hard to leave a relationship. When children get involved, it's 5 times more difficult. It's important to see the warning signs before and figure that, is this person really going to be a friend to me, a companion to me, beyond sex and beyond looks and beyond money? Is this person going to be a real friend and companion to me? Those are the yardsticks I would use. I fell in love very easily. And once you fall in love, then your judgment goes out the window. So, and I found it very difficult to leave relationships. But the fact of the matter is that for whatever they were, they rewarded me in many ways. They gave me many things. And I've written about them too. So relationships are a minefield. But if you, as I did, give it everything you have, um, and it still doesn't work, then you know it's time to move on.
Well, beautifully said. It's so true. It's very, very tough. I'm going to read from Babette because I love what she's written in the chat. I read the book twice in a row. So enthralling as I felt I was sitting with you and you told me your stories. And I exactly felt the same way. My last question before I hand it off to Meeta, you've seen so much in life and you've seen it so up close. And we're not just talking about glamour, we're talking about politics, we're talking about spirituality, we're talking about culture. What would you say was your biggest learning from all of this?
Firstly, that life is a wondrous experience. Life is a extraordinary journey. And, in terms of having seen across continents, people with money and power and glamour and etc., you realize that there are three games that people are playing: fame, power, and money. And whoever's got one wants the other two. If somebody's famous, he wants to be powerful and he wants to have lots of money. If he's got money, he wants to have power and be famous. So whoever's got one wants the other two. But the fact is, it's an unwinnable game because the boundaries keep changing, the goalposts keep changing. There's no end to what you want. My sense is that I've come to terms with life by finding contentment in the work I do, the relationships I have, and the small satisfactions I get in life along the way. And whatever fame comes, whatever money comes, whatever power comes, I treat those as bonuses, not as objectives that I must, markers that I must hit to show that I have been successful. Success for me is a sense of inner fulfillment. Those are the important things that have run my life. Although I've seen great success, at times in my life I've seen lots of money, at times in my life I've been bankrupt. That comes with the territory when you're an actor. It's part of the journey of an actor. And when you've had, a number of film industries to cope with, you have to deal with a lot of different sensibilities of a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And those things that I've explored in my book, because people need to know what it is to lead the life of an actor, what it is to become an international actor, how to survive those times, how to survive success, because even that is dangerous, how to survive failure, and how to rise like a phoenix from the ruins and resurrect yourself when you have to. So those are the things that I've explored in my book as well. And since you've read it, you know what I mean.
No, agreed. And I'm going to copy from Kashish, who's writing. Beautifully written, and your book is straight from the heart. And I do agree. And I would love to hear from all the audience members what was their favorite Kabir Bedi moment. And over to you, Meeta. I know you have lots of questions also.
Thank you, Sukirti. I have three direct questions, which I have taken from the book. But before that, I want to invite Mr. Jain, Mr. Mudit Jain, as he's been, I always say that he's been the sutradhar of connecting us.
Absolutely. I thanked him at the beginning.
Yeah.
Both him and Malti, yeah.
So, Mr. Jain.
No, I want to thank you and my wife also for getting Kabirji online. And Kabirji, before I say, I want to say that many of the people bought your book to read it. And they were
Wonderful.
very excited to have you and see you and relive their childhood crushes or whatever. So just
delighted to be.
So they're still not childhood crushes. They continue.
Okay. All right. I'm a guy. I didn't listen. So just two quick questions and the floor to you, Meeta ji and others. One is, was it painful or cathartic or both when you recalled old memories? And secondly, did you want what you have written in the book? Did people around you knew that was your view, or it was kept with you and now you have spilled it out in the open? Thank you.
Okay, good question, Mudit. Yes, it was cathartic because I had to, in a sense, relive all those things that I wrote about and relive with great depth and remember it and record it. So it was certainly cathartic, but it was also revelatory in a strange way, because I was looking at it with the eyes of today. So I could see myself with more compassion, more understanding, and I could see other people with more compassion and understanding. And it was also a closure in a way, because I'd finally put down what I knew and nobody else knew, which links actually to your second question, because many of the people that I've written about in the book have had books written about them. Their truths have been told, but my truths were not told. And it was very important for me to tell them like I saw it, as honestly as I could, so that the way I saw it was also recorded. And there's no difference in terms of the facts and sequence of events, etc. It's just a difference of perspective and a difference of how each person experienced that relationship. But yes, it was certainly cathartic, and as I said, revelatory, and gave me also a great understanding of myself in those days, because I could see myself with different eyes.
Thank you. Say hi to Parveen and over to you, Mitaji.
Thank you, Mudit. So I can read the comment in the chat box. People say your voice is still rock solid. So when you were, your camera was off and you were speaking, I felt even if you don't switch on the camera, your voice it travels. It stays with us. Like,
thank you so much.
Mudit, we were not children when we started watching his movies. We were in our school and colleges time, and we were like, as our group was talking about, that people were drooling over you, and there was a discussion on the group about your look, about your personality, about so yeah, so we were not kids.
Nice to appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Somebody's written about the colorful journey you had. So I must say it is a colorful journey with so many shades. So my question starts from there, that the time you talked about open marriages, you talked about live-in relationship, night stays together, a very bold life or very open lifestyle, which was not common. So I have not heard anybody else also, any actor also talking about that kind of a lifestyle. Open marriages, and one place where you mentioned about your marriage, that you asked that, I wrote that line. So, so you asked, could I ever make a marriage work? So from open relationship, bold relationship to 4 marriages.
That question was asked later. Yes, in the context of another marriage. But you were talking about, living with open marriages and living this very open bohemian kind of lifestyle. We were the bohemians of Bollywood. We were the people that wanted to shake up, change the world. We were part of the 60s. The 60s were perhaps the most interesting decade of the last century, because it was a time of social and cultural and sexual ferment, and society was changing. There were demonstrations of peace, and the pill liberated people sexually, and societies were changing in ways in front of us, and we wanted to change society here from that rather hidebound, rigid way they looked at things. I mean, the very fact that Prathama and I lived together was a matter of a magazine headline. They lived together without being married. Today, nobody cares. But we liked shocking people. We wanted to shock people. We wanted to be the hellraisers of our generation. And the 60s certainly gave us the energy and the inspiration to do it. Now, open marriages aren't that common even today. And certainly it's something very surprising and very uncommon in those days. And it's not something that that was something that we got married and we said, we're going to have an open marriage. It wasn't that. My chapter on Pratima talks about how a normal marriage transitioned to being an open marriage as a way of saving the marriage, and what it feels like to be in an open marriage, and what you feel and what you go through, and the consequences of that. So that is something I've explored in my book. But you know, Pratima was India's first streaker, and people said, how can you be married to a woman who's a streaker? How can you be married to a woman who's running naked in public and having pictures of that printed in magazines? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you love a woman, if you have children with her, and she does something like that, is that by itself grounds for divorce? I mean, there are people that might think so, but we prided ourselves on being liberals. We prided ourselves on being different. We prided ourselves on setting different standards. So for me, that was not grounds enough to end a marriage. And that happened actually in the middle of my biggest break, which was the Sandokan series, shooting the Sandokan series, which made me a star in Europe. And I didn't want to be thrown off focus or thrown off track by emotional dramas in the middle of a time when I needed to focus my energies 100%. So a number of things happened, and streaking just got accepted. Once it fine, I just accept. That wasn't reason enough to break a marriage for me. There were other things, which I've also chronicled in my book, that led me to end that marriage. But that's what happens. We were the hellraisers of the 60s and 70s, and that was part of the mystique of what we did. And we wanted to be the rebels of the age.
No, never ever, at least when I was reading the book, I never ever felt that, oh my God, this was like kind of an action of a rebel, or an action of saying that, yes, I can do it. It was more coming from empathy and understanding, and kind of, yeah. I felt that in all relationship, you were always considerate. You were always giving. You always try to save all the relationships. So it never ever, I felt that there could be another choice. So yeah, on that.
Yeah,
any advice? Yeah, sorry.
The thing is, because I've had many relationships that people know about. Therefore, they assume that this guy's a ladies' man. He's a flirt. He just wants to, have fun, etc. That is an impression that I finally needed to correct, because my marriages weren't one-night stands. They were 5 years, 7 years, 15 years. My present marriage with Parveen, which is a wonderful and most fulfilling marriage, lasted. The marriage is six years, but we've been together for 15 years. So I've never taken relationships lightly in that sense. Relationships that mattered. These have had great duration and great intensity. And as I shared in my book, with all the utar chadhav of a roller coaster and all the emotional dramas that accompany it.
No, actually, the image maybe people had, and the image what I get after reading the book is very different. It's like it creates depth in relationship. That's why you understand that because of career, because of traveling, because of so many things, it happened. It was not something that you were wanting to run out of from one marriage to another one.
Yeah, in the case of Nikki, for instance, who was my third wife, we were together 15 years. The fact of the matter is, she wanted to be in England and I wanted to be in India. And we tried to keep it going for a while. Only the airlines and telephone companies were benefiting. She was developing her own circle of friends in England. I was developing my own circle of friends in India. We was living different lives. And at that point, you come to the conclusion that, listen, being married is not going to serve either of us, because somebody is going to, do something unfaithful or do something terrible. And we talked like adults, and we came to an arrangement, and we reached a financial settlement, and she got the London house, and it all worked out very well.
Yeah, true. No, true. So on page 241, you wrote about why did the spirits of Jerusalem come to show me the city? And you said you couldn't explain. And there is a lot about why things were happening, spirituality, learnings. So can you explain it a little further? Because you have a lot of experiences and learning from different kind of a spirituality.
I do, Meeta. I do. I've always had spirituality has always been a part of my life, both from my father's side, who's a descendant of Guru Nanak, as well as becoming a philosopher in his own right in Italy for the last 30 years of his life. My mother, who was a freedom fighter, Gandhian, who discovered Buddhism and became one of the senior-most Buddhist nuns in the world. So Sikhism and Buddhism I had from my parents. I spent a summer of my life being a Buddhist monk during my youth in Burma. But there was always a philosophical curiosity in me because I'd studied a lot of religious texts. I sang hymns in church and was part of a Christian school where they taught us the Bible and everything. I said to myself, Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Mahavir, the Prophet Muhammad, they're all saying different things. They all can't be right. I mean, every religion gives us wonderful values to live by. Great ceremonies for birth, marriages, death, a wonderful sense of belonging, a sense of community. But the fact is, philosophically, they are saying different things. Somebody's saying, you just die and either go to heaven or hell. Somebody's saying there's rebirth. Somebody's saying there's a soul. Somebody's saying there's no soul. Some people are saying there's free will. Somebody's saying there's destiny. Some people are saying there's God. Somebody's saying there's no. Everyone can't be right at once. So what is the truth of this? So that is sort of a journey that I went on throughout my life, going to many teachers, many philosophers, reading many books, having many experiences, which I've chronicled on my chapter in Beliefs. And there I've shared the conclusions I've come to of those beliefs that resonate for me, what I to be true. It is largely based on the Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh traditions of thought, but it's more than that. It's for instance, I mean, yes, I believe in God, but everyone that believes in God believes in different ideas of God. So what is my idea of God? I don't see him as a judgmental God, but that's something you have to discover in my book, what I mean by that. I've gone into where did it all come from? How did my minuscule atom create a universe of trillions of galaxies? Where did the energy for that come from? Those are questions I've explored in my book, using philosophy, using psychologists, using scientists, and various things. And my beliefs today are a kind of fruit salad of beliefs, but they resonate for me. I feel they're true for me. And like, I didn't know whether, even if rebirth exists, whether spirits are real or not. But I wrote about this experience I had in Jerusalem, where spirits actually came and visited me. And they lured me to the window and they gave me a vista of Jerusalem as Christ would have seen it, with all traces of the 20th century obliterated. And my hair stood on end. It was a completely spiritual experience. And I wrote about that. I had an extraordinary spiritual experience in the Golden Temple in Amritsar, where I absolutely felt I'd come home, and I felt the oneness of everything, which is what Guru Nanak talked about, the one from which everything comes. And those experiences are very profound, and I have shared them, and the journey to finding them in my book. I mean, it's one chapter, so I couldn't give you all the details, but there's some pretty amazing things that happened to me in the course of that, which I have chronicled.
And I think the book was walking all through with some part of spirituality, some part of experiences. So it was not just like, okay, this is one chapter you dedicated it. It was, for me, it was walking alongside.
Well, naturally, that's part of me. That's been part of me. It's shaped the way I look at things, shaped the way I deal with um, adversity, with the life choices I make. I mean, a lot of the courage I got to lead a different life came from watching my parents, who were Oxford graduates and sacrificed everything to fight for India's independence. And I said to myself, you know, they have shown me that you can lead a different life and feel good about it and get great satisfaction from it. You don't have to take a tried and tested path. You can blaze new trails as they did. And they gave me the courage to be different, even though it had its risks. I mean, I had a very safe job in advertising. I was doing very well making ad films for Lintas and Ogilvy and Mehta. And I left it to join the most insecure of industries, the film industry. What gave me that courage? Their example that you can do something different if you believe in it, if you follow your dreams and want to make that happen. It can happen, and you will have a life, and you will survive, perhaps even thrive.
Beautifully said. Because as before the show, we were talking about it. You have experienced many, many lives in one life. The impact on my mind. Oh my God! How can a man have these many experiences in one life? So that was, and for me, all of the experiences had something to learn from. I was not reading it as a gossipy or a information something. It was always like, ouch, this is what you can learn from it. So one last, because I know audience's questions are pouring in, I have to give it to them. But one last question, which is like very close to my heart. Mental health is still a big stigma. People don't talk about it. You have dealt with lot many issues in your life.
Yes.
What do you kind of want to? This is for audience. This is for us to. We don't speak about it. We don't accept it. You have dealt with it, and you have dealt it with a lot of dignity, with a lot of. You made a lot of efforts. Whether it was with Parveen or whether it was with Siddharth. So, what is it that we can learn from it?
Meeta, today mental health has become a big issue. Because, there's different types of mental health problems. There's the raving lunatic who has to be actually tied up in an institution. And at one end of the spectrum, at the other end of the spectrum, there's what's happening to society today. People are losing their jobs, they're losing their office space, they're losing loved ones. Women are losing the spaces in their homes that used to belong to them exclusively. Suddenly it's crowded with children and husbands who can't go to schools or work. There is a sense of loss and mourning that people are suffering. And this leads to depression. People who've lost jobs, people who've lost, the security of their routines. This creates great uncertainty, which creates great depression. Many people are going through a lot of depression today. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is the people that are institutionalized. And then there's the spectrum of people that have actual mental health issues like schizophrenia, like bipolar, like manic depressives. And let me say, today's medicines are much better. Today's medicines make these conditions manageable, if not treatable. So it's not a hopeless situation. There's hope. But I found that that the biggest problem is that the afflicted person doesn't want to acknowledge they have a problem. Getting them across that barrier is the biggest problem. And once you do that, then how you deal with them is the next problem, because the person you're seeing is not necessarily the person you think you're seeing. They've changed in some fundamental way, and you have to deal with that changed reality yourself. So, firstly, I think the caregiver has to be given as much sympathy as the afflicted, and secondly, I feel that mental health issues should be looked at the way we look at physical health issues. You have a physical problem, you get medicines, you are treated for it, you get better. Many mental problems can be treated in that way, in the same way. Therefore, the stigma that comes with them is undeserved. I talked about how Parveen was so afraid of the stigma that she wouldn't deal with the problem because she felt if the word got out, the industry would drop her like a hot potato, which is what they did eventually. But that's a separate story. All I'm saying is this is something that requires far more understanding and sympathy than people are giving it normally, because it is a problem. It is an increasing problem, and it shouldn't be, and it should be given the same kind of attention that's given to physical problems without the stigma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in like one concept of mine changed about Parveen Bobby, because we always heard gossips and gossips and gossips. This person has dumped her, this person has dumped her, and that's why she became what she became. But from your book, one thing that has changed, that okay, she actually had mental issues. It is not to blame. And what you talked about, you and Mahesh Bhatt and people like were there for her rather than using her kind of. So that is good part about the book. I felt that everything had an answer to the whatever we have read or heard that time. It had an answer.
Because the media will take the most easily propagatable narrative that is easy to propagate. Oh yes, this problem was caused by this. They're not psychologists. They don't know the inside story. They don't know the person. They've not lived through the trauma, tragedy, and everything it takes to deal with that situation. That's also one of the reasons I had to write the book, because I needed people to know the inside story and to know what Parveen actually suffered and went through, and all we did to try and heal her.
No, actually, until today, I would have thought the same, that I had the same story, because you never bother to dig into it. What you heard at that time, it stays with you. So that changed big time. So I know audiences are waiting, and can I take audiences now?
Sure, of course.
Thank you. Harshita, please quickly, let's start asking questions, and please keep your questions precise because people are waiting.
Yeah. So first of all, we have Manishka Bhaskar with us. She wants to ask a question.
Okay.
Hi, Manishka. You can go ahead with your question.
Hi, Harshita. Hi, Kabir. I've read your book.
Hi. Thank you.
I want to tell you that you are a devastatingly good-looking man.
Oh, bless you.
It is
Every man likes to be
not
appreciated. Every man likes to be appreciated, and I'm no different.
It is impossible to not look at you and drool. I'm being very honest.
Thank you.
I saw a performance of yours at CD Fort years back with Nikki, and honestly, I wanted to bring you home. You were that good looking and that good.
When I played Othello.
Having said that, I've read the book, very interesting, lots of twists and turns. You've really led a life which is extraordinary, and lots of highs, lots of lows. I want to check with you or ask you that what really kept your positive spirit ticking? You know, to lose a son, to lose loved ones, to see ups and downs financially, takes a lot of courage to step out of your comfort zone, to move out of India where you were known to an international scenario. I want to know what keeps your positive spirit ticking, because it's very inspiring.
Thank you very much, Manisha. The thing is, I think a lot of the strength that I got, again, I got from my parents, just by the example of their living. I mean, the setbacks they saw, the difficulties they faced in raising us, giving us education, and the calmness with which they dealt with it, even though most people would be banging their heads against the wall, that stayed with me. But I've been a very positive person. You know, there's a lot of suffering in life. People suffer for various reasons. Things they want and can't get, things they have and they're afraid of losing, things in themselves or others they want to change, but they can't change, and therefore that causes unhappiness. Suffering, unhappiness are part of life, but it's very important to remember that they are not all of life. There is the greatest miracle in the world is having consciousness and being alive and being able to sense everything around us and experience all the joys and fulfillment of life. And I've never forgotten that no matter how difficult your circumstance, if you just dwell on that piece of negativity, you will never get out of it. You have to come out of it with positivity. And it takes a lot of mental energy to do that. And the only way you can do that, not by saying be positive, is by remembering what is so fantastic about life, by remembering what got you to your heights in the first place, by remembering the young man that set out from Delhi with 700 rupees in his pocket to try and, prove his worth.
Yes.
You remember your strengths. You say, I can do it again. You say, I will rise from these ashes again because life has so much more to offer. This is not the end of the world. And you rebuild yourself brick by brick because of that positivity. I've always believed in the power of positivity because the positivity is the power of life itself. And life is a wondrous journey. And let's not just pull ourselves down by thinking that the negative is all there is to life. A lot of negative people do that. But you have to rise above it because life is so much more. And we need to make the most of it.
Your positivity shines through. More power to you.
Thank
And
you.
continue looking. You're devastatingly handsome. But can I give you a virtual hug? I can't see you in
A
person.
virtual hug.
But a virtual hug, please.
Virtual hug to you too.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sipping Thoughts. Right back at you. Thank you, Sipping Thoughts, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you. Stay well. Rock it again.
I will.
Thank you. Harshita next.
Yeah. Next up, we have Meenal Goyal.
Hi, Kabir. I also wanted to say that you're very handsome. So,
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
my question to you is fame worth it? Do you think your life would have been easier if you were not very famous?
Sorry, repeat that question. I didn't hear it fully.
I'm saying, do you think is fame worth it? Do you think your life would have been easier if you weren't that famous?
Fame is worth it. Fame is worth it. I mean, like I said, every achievement is in a sense worth it. Yes, there are downsides to fame. Yes, you're under the lens. Yes, people want to know about your personal life. Yes, you lose some of your privacy. But on the balance, fame is what we work for as actors. Fame is what we want because that increases our strength, our bargaining power in the market, gives us better films, gives us great opportunities. We can champion causes we believe in, and people get to hear about things we want them to hear about. We get publicity. So there are pluses and minuses to fame, but on the balance, fame is good because it does empower you in certain ways. And would my life have been simpler if I wasn't famous? Certainly it would have been simpler. I'm not sure what I would have done, but I would have done something because creative people don't just sit still. They always want to do something. And I think it's very important for people to remain in touch with their creative selves, no matter what their professions are. So creative people always will do something. So I can't say my life would have been simpler. I'm sure it would have complicated in some creative way or the other. But fame has been, on the balance, good for me.
Thank you. Harshita next.
Yeah.
Kabir ji, we have a few questions. Can we take it till 5 or can we take 10? What the time you say?
Sure we can.
Thank you.
So I'll ask Vandana Saxena to unmute herself for her question. Hi, Vandana, you're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Mr. Kabir, as I think everyone is saying, everybody is drooling over Sipping Thoughts today. What I guess. So, but let me tell you, I must compliment, you are a great storyteller. I don't know how many of you have said that, but I'm midway, the book. And believe me, I picked up the book because I was very curious and I wanted to read it out. But I'm sure, a person of your stature and such a multifaceted person, it would be very difficult to pick up few instances, few stories you wanted to share with us. And while putting that, did you ever feel, oh, this story would have ended in a different manner while you were writing it? Or you were quite satisfied that, okay, life is good with whatever stories I'm telling? Or after you finished it, you read it by yourself and said, oh, I missed out on this. I should have added this.
Vandana, the thing is, I chose to tell my story in a certain kind of way, which is that I told it through a series of stories, right? And therefore, each story had a logic of its own.
Right.
I could have taken the story of my Italian success and just made that the story. It would have ended in a very different way. But because it happened at the same time of my relationship with Parveen, I called the chapter Sandokan and Parveen Babi, and shared what happened to me and what happened to her, and all that happened between us in that tumultuous time. And the story had to end with the end of our relationship at the end of her life, not just at the end of the romantic relationship when it happened, because I then followed my career and her career and how we finally had our final meeting and how she finally passed away. So that story had to have that end. If I'd structured my stories differently, if I'd structured the way I told the book differently, each story could have had a different beginning, middle, and end. But given my structure I chose, that was the only way I could do it. And I think it works because it combines achievement with emotion, triumph with tragedy, and it just leads to a far more fulfilling experience in terms of a story being told.
Right. And I found, while I was reading, I'm still reading it, I think you were much ahead of times, your relationships, whether it was your relationships or your careers, when people were still finding feet in Bollywood, you actually moved out. And your relationships, I think it was the whole dynamics of your relationships was entirely different, whether as a father or, a husband. And it really gives you a soft and vulnerable part of you. Actually, it exposes your, that heart, that pure heart, and vulnerable. I can't use any. I can't think of any other word, but very vulnerable. But thank you so much. Great reading. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
it's wonderful to talk to you. God bless you. Thank you so much.
And nothing has been greater joy than people loving what I wrote, because it's like a parent loving his baby and people loving the baby. So that gives parents great joy. And right now I feel I'm the parent of this newborn book. And any appreciation of the book gives me great joy. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Thank you for asking that question, Dr. Vandana. And before moving ahead, sir, I would like to mention one thing. In this book, you mentioned like how you met Beatles at the age of 19. And, for people in my age, I'm 19 and I'm in the same age when you met Beatles. And it's such a big inspiration for people like me that you have to follow it. You can do what you have to do.
Yeah.
You got out of Delhi and you moved to Mumbai and you followed your dreams. And, it's such a big inspiration for all of us.
I think it's very important to follow your dreams. But let me say two things. One is dreams by themselves are very important. If you really want to understand more about your own dreams that you have every night, I suggest you read Carl Jung's book, because his interpretation of dreams really I found the most profound. So I'm giving you my discovery of what resonated for me there. But most young people are sort of torn between dreams of what they'd like to do and the need to make a living, And ideally, if you can combine the two like I did, nothing like it. But even if for a while or longer while, you have to do something to make a living that is satisfying to you, never lose touch with that creative part of yourself, because you can always express that. You can be selling insurance or selling cars or being a doctor or a scientist, but you can still sing, you can still paint, you can still act. There's things you can still do. And it's very important to remain in touch that creative self, because unexpressed creativity is the root of a lot of problems. So don't forget your dreams, is all I'm saying. Never forget your dreams, no matter what.
Thank you so much, sir, for for that. Next up, we have Smita for her question. You can go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So my question is, on being a celebrity is a tough task. And when back in India, we in the crowd have a habit of judging all the celebrity lives on the superficial terms. So my first question is what would be your appeal to the readers or the audience to look forward towards your book? And also being a reader, reading a book of a writer whom I know is a writer has a different reaction. But reading a book written by a celebrity or an actor has a different reaction. So what is your take on that?
Well, I can only talk about the book that I have written, because many people have written many books and many fine books and some bad books. I can't get into all that. That's too complicated a debate. All I'll say is that my book is a very good way of looking beyond and behind what it is to be a celebrity. Because as I begin my chapter 3 by saying, film stars are the objects of a million fantasies, but they're not objects. They have all the frailties and strengths of the human race. And that's the important thing to remember, that film stars are not objects. They are also people. They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. And of course, they want to project their strengths and hide their weaknesses. In my case, I have shown both my strengths and my weaknesses, which is why you get a real insight into what it is to lead the life of a celebrity, of a star, not just in India, but in Europe, in America, Bollywood, Hollywood, and all the journey that takes you there. The only way that I knew to tell the story was to tell it as authentically as I could. Because if I tell it authentically, people will get it. As people have. It seems to have touched people in a beautiful way.
Right.
Otherwise, people smell bullshit. They also get totally bored reading a biography that's all praise of what a great man I am, look all the people I met, look all the great films I made. How much can you take of that? What you really want is to understand the relationships they had, the dilemmas they had, the crossroads in life they faced, how they took those decisions. That's what I set out to explore, because I said, my life is a great example of all the ups and downs that a person can suffer in this profession. It's a strange profession. It's a very insecure profession. Income is always irregular. Your bills are always regular. You want to have a good lifestyle. You want to send your children to good schools. If you're married and divorced, there's obligations, financial obligations that you have to fulfill. There's so many demands on your time and attention and money. So there's going to be points of crisis. And I think it's important to be able to share those and say, look, this is what happens in this life. And that's what makes my book so real, because I've let it all hang out and said, at this point, I fell flat in my face, but I raised myself, and how? At this point, I had enormous success. Go through that journey with me. And so when people praise my book, I feel very good, because it means they've got a sense of everything that I experienced in this journey of mine, this wondrous journey of mine through this life.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We are running out of time, and we can take last question. I would like to, Harshita,
we have Kashish here for her question. Kashish Gupta.
Right. Hi, Kabir. Thank you so much for this session. Heard you
Hi,
on an earlier
Kashish.
platform. I had not
Okay.
read the book then, I loved that session. So I picked up the book and I was
Thank
determined
you.
to read it before this one. Thank you. So my
Thank you.
question, Kabir, is that did the young actor always have a book inside him?
That's a very good question, Kashish. I've always loved writing. I've always loved writing because my mother wrote beautifully. And as you can see from the letters of hers that I've extracted and put in the book, she had a beautiful way of expressing things. My father certainly was a writer as well. I was trained as a copywriter in advertising. So I always knew I could write. But there is a difference between being able to write and being a writer. Writers sit down and write, and I never made that my discipline. Although along the way, I wrote some short stories, one of which is in my book, which Khushwant Singh printed in his collection of best Indian short stories. So the writer was always within me. I'm not sure the book was within me. The writer was within me. And when I came time to tell my story, the book emerged. And for a long time, I was in great doubt as to how to tell my story. From what point of view, from what age, do I begin at the end, do I begin at the beginning? There were all kinds of problems. It didn't feel right to me. And when I figured out this form of telling it in a series of stories that when you take together become my life, I just sat down and it just burst like a volcano and came out of me. And I wrote, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, nonstop for 9 months, and the book was done. That's the kind of madness it took to do it. So obviously there was a book bottled up in me somewhere, but it had to find way to the point where it couldn't bear not to be born, and then it just came out.
Wow. Thank you so much for that.
Thank
and
you.
one last thing, I'm an English educator, so I give you full points for the command over the language. Really
Thank you so
beautifully
much.
described in the book as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to thank my parents for that. I have to thank advertising for that. I have to thank my reading for that. And meeting and knowing lots of people like you who read and love books and are educated and cultured. So thank you all for that too.
Grateful. Thank you.
Harshita,
We can take one last person, Ritu Bhagat.
this is, don't stretch, let people be asking and coming with after reading the book again. So yeah, last question.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Ritu,
Yeah.
you can go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, Kabirji. Actually, I had pre-ordered your book and I have read it. And then in your book only, I read that you have written down that Pratima Bedi ji also had written down a book. So I ordered that and I have read that also. And you have, both the books are very different. So I would like to ask, how could you maintain that difference between the two books? Because both of you were talking about almost the same thing.
There's no difference in terms of the timeline of events. The difference is only as to what we perceive of those events, certain events which she didn't write about, and certain events which I chose not to write about, because I was telling my story, as I said, within a certain structure of a short story. And I wanted to get the essence of the story, the essence of my story with Pratima correct. So it had to be dramatic, it had to be clear, and I think I've captured the truth of our relationship better. Pratima has got many more details of many other things in our relationship, which is also very interesting. But we had our differences as people, so our stories will be different. And I'm glad you read both, because you will be able to decide which feels truer to you as a narrative in terms of the centrality, the essence of that relationship.
I really liked it so much that I have presented it to a film institute so that many of the students can read it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
That's the greatest compliment you could give me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
That's a wonderful note to end on.
Thank
So
you.
separation is always difficult, and the separation where we don't know how many comments we can write, compliment we can read, and so on that note, we want to say thank you, and I know that our audience will keep buy this book, and that this is a very therapeutic book. I didn't read it as a story. I bought it as to read as like a story, but it is a lot to learn from it. So, last word you want to tell our audience?
All I can say right now is that I'm so grateful to have spoken to all of you, and these wonderful questions that you've put to me. It means that many of you have read my book, got it, been touched by it, and right now, as I said, nothing gives me greater joy than people liking my book, because that is my mission right now. It's my baby. It's what I want to grow by word of mouth, and ultimately, word of mouth is the strongest way to spread the message. So, if any of you want to write a review on Amazon, I'd be most grateful, because that helps a lot. All of you who can tell others about my book, I'd be most grateful. Right now, it's not the easiest time for the book trade. You know, bookstores are suffering because lack of footfalls. Publishers are afraid of publishing things because there's just certain types are being printed. So anything you can do to help books in general, I would be most grateful for. And if you can do anything in particular to help my book, I'd be even more grateful.
No, thank you, Kabirji. We will write, and at least I will write, because for me it's a genuine book that I read, and a lot to learn from it. So we surely will give our feedback and hope to see you sometime again soon. You are leaving our audience asking for more. So please read the book, give your feedback. It will reach to Mr. Bedi, and we will try to share everything with them, whatever you people share with us. So on that note, thank you. Separation again.
Thank you, Meeta. Thank you, Sukirti, and thank you so much, all of you who've participated in this, Harshita and Ritu, and all the people who asked me questions. I'm most grateful for making this such a lively and wonderful session. And I hope we meet again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.